I was sitting in the front row of the New Vision Gala, watching my nephew, Julian, toast to his own genius. He held a flute of champagne, telling 200 of Atlanta's elite developers that he was the savior of soul food. He smiled that bright, MBA smile and announced that Hattie's Table, the restaurant I built with my bare hands, was being bulldozed to make way for a luxury high-rise called The Vibe. He looked at me, sitting there in my Sunday best, and gave me a little wave. A wave that said, "Don't worry, old woman, I'll put you in a nice home." He thought he had won because he had the MBA. He thought because I let him run the books, I was senile. But Julian made one fatal mistake. He was so busy looking at the projections, he forgot to read the due diligence report. He didn't know that the papers he signed 20 minutes ago didn't just transfer the business. They transferred a $150,000 tax debt and trapped him in a lease he couldn't legally fulfill. My name is Hattie May. And today, I'm going to tell you how I let my greedy nephew steal a business that was actually a ticking time bomb. I'm glad you're here, family. If you believe respect goes both ways, hit that like button. And tell me in the comments, what's the worst financial advice a young person has ever tried to give you? Let's get into the story. Hattie's Table has been the heartbeat of MLK Drive since the 82nds. But when my nephew Julian came back from business school in New York, he didn't see a heartbeat. He saw a carcass to be scavenged. I brought him in as general manager to modernize us. I wanted him to take over eventually. But on his first day, he looked at my menu and sneered. "Auntie," he said, "collard greens are poverty food. We need to pivot. We need deconstructed soul bowls. We need a cashless app-only system." I tried to guide him. "Julian, our customers pay cash, and they want bones in their meat." He rolled his eyes. "Hattie, you're operating on nostalgia. I'm operating on metrics." Visual. Julian firing staff, replacing fresh food with frozen bags. He started pushing me out. He fired Mrs. Jenkins, my head cook, because she didn't fit the brand image. He stopped fixing the AC to save money, and then he found the loophole. The restaurant bylaws allowed the general manager to force a buyout if the founder was deemed operationally incompetent. He started gaslighting me, hiding invoices so I'd miss payments, changing passwords. Then he'd look at me with mock pity. "Auntie, you're forgetting things. Maybe it's time to rest." I went to my lawyer, Clarence. We looked at the books. Julian had run up debt, and there was a $150,000 tax bill for the renovation that was due next month. Clarence said, "Hattie, we should pay this tax bill before fighting him for the company." I looked at the tax bill. Then I looked at the aggressive buyout contract Julian sent me. "No," I said, "don't pay the taxes. Let the owner of the LLC handle that." Clarence smiled. He knew exactly what I was doing. Julian had a secret deal. He had promised my lot to Apex developers for $12 million to build condos. He'd already taken a $500,000 advance to buy a Porsche and a loft downtown. To get that $12 million, he needed me gone. So I gave him what he wanted. I started walking slower. I acted confused during meetings. I let him hear me tell my sister, "I just want to retire." The morning of the gala, he slapped a stack of documents on my desk. 300 pages. "Just the transfer paperwork, Auntie. Standard boilerplate. Sign here, here, and here. I've waived the 30-day reading period for you, so we can announce it tonight." "You waived the reading period?" I asked, adjusting my glasses. "We don't need it. I know this asset better than you do," he scoffed. He was right about one thing. He knew the business asset, but he forgot about the real estate. See, in commercial real estate, there is the business entity, the LLC, and the property, the dirt. I own the dirt through a separate land trust I set up 20 years ago. The deed to that land has a restrictive covenant. The property may only be used for community dining or affordable housing. No commercial luxury development allowed. If the tenant, the restaurant, attempts to develop luxury condos, the lease is automatically terminated. The document Julian shoved in front of me included a standard lease assumption agreement. Clause 4B clearly stated, Tenant accepts all existing deed restrictions and covenants as recorded in the county registry. It was right there. He just didn't read it because he was too arrogant to check the registry. I signed the transfer of the business. There, I said. It's all yours, Julian. The business is 100% yours. He grinned. Finally. At the gala, Julian was in his element. He had a 3D rendering of the Vibe Condos behind him. Ladies and gentlemen, he boomed, soul food is dead. The future is vertical luxury. Tonight, I officially announce the acquisition of Hattie's Table and the sale of the land to Apex developers. The developers clapped. Julian pointed to me. And thanks to Auntie Hattie for stepping aside. I stood up. I didn't smile. I walked to the stage. Auntie, sit down, he hissed as I approached. I took the mic. Julian, you have an MBA. You're very smart. Thank you, he said, trying to usher me off. But you skipped the due diligence. The room went quiet. You see, Julian just announced he sold the land. But Julian, you only bought the LLC. You bought the stoves, the name, and the recipes. I pulled the deed of trust from my purse. I own the dirt. And this morning, when you signed the lease assumption, you agreed to the deed restrictions. This land is zoned for community service only. I turned to the developers. If you build condos here, the land ownership reverts to the city. You will own a glass tower on land you don't possess. The lead developer stood up, furious. Julian, is this true? Julian was sweating. She's bluffing. I own the company. You do, I said cheerfully. You own Hattie's Table LLC, which means you also own the assets and the liabilities. I paused for effect. Julian, since you are now the sole owner, you are personally liable for the $150,000 in back taxes due next Tuesday. I was going to pay it from my savings, but since you pushed me out, that's on you. Julian looked at his phone. His bank alerts were probably going off right then. Oh, and one more thing, I whispered into the mic. Since you just announced a luxury condo project, you are in breach of the lease. Consider this your eviction notice. Get your stoves out of my building by Monday. The collapse was spectacular. The developers sued Julian for the $500,000 advance. Since he had technically committed fraud by promising land he couldn't deliver, they froze his assets. The IRS came for the $150,000 in taxes. Since he had signed the personal guarantee in the transfer papers, another page he didn't read, they garnished his wages and seized his accounts. He tried to tell the judge I tricked him. The judge asked, "Did you have legal counsel?" Julian said, "I have an MBA. I represented myself." The judge laughed and banged the gavel. Case dismissed. Julian is currently living in his mother's basement, delivering food for the very apps he tried to force on my customers. As for the restaurant, I evicted Hattie's Table LLC. I created a new company, Hattie's Soul Kitchen. I hired Mrs. Jenkins back. And I brought in Sarah, a young waitress Julian fired, to manage the place. She reads every contract I put in front of her. Legacy isn't about the name on the door. It's about respecting the foundation that holds the door up. Julian wanted the fruit, but he tried to chop down the tree. If you enjoyed seeing arrogance get shut down, like this video and share it. And check out this next story where a landlord tried to keep my security deposit and ended up paying for my vacation. Stay blessed, family.